EPA entity. The reason I use this word EPA, it comes from the Hawaiian spiritual tradition. We're talking about entities that are in the astral world, which come close to a human being, which is incarnated, and they do things together, so to speak. I think it was 2012, I don't remember. There was some kind of mass shooting, one of the many mass shootings here in the United States. And some guy went into a school and shot a bunch of kids and the teachers and killed 15 people, I think. It was a very, very horrible experience. I wasn't particularly looking for that information, but it appeared in the news, and I saw, and they showed a picture of the shooter. And a few weeks before that, I had been reading a book about entities. The person who wrote the book, the author, mentioned entities in the Hawaiian tradition called EPA, which are negative entities which come close to people and make them do all sorts of very negative things. That's the idea. These really negative entities, and these are very heavy ones. It's much heavier than the previous one we saw that was sucking energy from this lady. She's a normal person, and she was just suffering. But this person here, it's probably beyond healing in this case. So when I saw a picture of him in the news, I looked at his eyes. When I look at people's eyes, I can see what's behind it sometimes. And when I saw this guy, I saw inside him, and I said, ooh, this guy is not alone. There is somebody with him. And so I did a chart, as I mentioned earlier. I'm curious. I want an explanation, and I want the symbolism. So I asked, was he acting alone, or was he being influenced by one of these negative entities? So this is the chart. What do we have? We have a person, and we have a hidden enemy attacking that person, right? And the person needs to be weak psychologically in order to allow that entity to be part of his or her life. The only difference between this chart and the previous one, first, this is not a normal person, of course. He's beyond deranged. And the previous chart, somebody hired House 12 to attack another person. Here, that is not part of the deal. This is something that they have an agreement between them, right? So I'm asking about Saturn. This is the shooter, the guy, right? Signified by Saturn. And remember that I said we need an external significator for the entity. And remember I said about the same planet ruling House 12 and the first house, which is what we have here. Saturn rules this house, which is a shooter, and rules his own 12th house. So this is not a testimony for an entity or for black magic, but this is a testimony that he's his own enemy, that he's weak psychologically. This is the testimony we want to show that he is psychologically debilitated, vulnerable, okay? So this describes him. And if you look at Saturn by Antician, it's right in the ascendant, his ascendant. It's telling, okay, this Saturn is very important in his life in this event. So it's talking about his house 12. So he and his house 12 are one. So who is the entity? Well, we have a planet right on the 12th cusp. Okay, this is basic Horary technique. All right, we need to find another significator for the entity. Here it is. It's Mars right on the cusp. Now look at the sign where Saturn is, Mars. And look at the sign where Mars is, Saturn. So this is a case which you will hear in esoteric or metaphysical paranormal stuff about agreements between souls and between people, okay? So here we have an agreement. It wasn't somebody else who hired Mars. Here's an agreement between Saturn and Mars. So the chart shows that. So it keeps painting the picture. In this context, do we care about the essential dignity of Mars and Saturn? No, we don't. It's not necessary. We know that these people are nuts. We could confirm this because Mars is exalted, puts a lot of importance in itself. That's descriptive, and it's meaningful because to do this kind of stuff, you need to be totally self-centered and selfish. Nobody does this out of love. So it could be descriptive. But it's more important here, the reception between them. That's very descriptive of this kind of relationship. They have an agreement. We answered the question, but the chart may be showing more things. He shot children and adults, right? So Jupiter is the children. Here, it's Antician. It's about here. It's opposing Mars. So the children were not only connected to him, to the shooter, but connected to the entity. So if there was any doubt that an entity was in the situation, here it eliminates the doubt, because Mars has a direct connection with the children. It's like Mars shot the children. It was both, of course. This guy pulled the trigger, right? And the adults are other people, right? They're here in the house of the children. Okay, they're the teacher. It was a children's school, right? So the adults were there. We could stop here, but the chart is very eloquent and very generous. In charts about the psyche and our mundane matters where all planets are involved, complex charts, this is not beginner's chart. You have to look at everything to see if they say something. And we're expanding our context, right? The things we're learning today here about aliens, for example, you may have not heard before, that expands the context. You see, okay, so maybe there's more stuff, right? Let's see what else this chart says in that respect. The moon is usually like Fortuna. It's pointing at something. So if you see if by Antician it's somewhere, okay, all right, so it's here by Antician. Maybe it means nothing. So let's see. Oh, this is house 3. Let's look at the ruler of house 3. Oh, Venus. Okay, remember house 3? Okay, extraterrestrials. Okay, maybe. But then look at Venus Antician, right? In the most relevant house in the chart. Planets in relevant houses are part of interpretation, are part of the picture the chart is giving you. So if you don't want to interpret like that, maybe you have to interpret some other way. Based on my knowledge of the context and my previous experience, yes, I would definitely add this to the interpretation. But to answer the querent's question, yes, he did not act alone. He had a really bad friend indeed in the picture. Okay, so we have 3 entities, the shooter, the whatever entity, and we have a connection with this house, which could be a non-human entity. Different traditions will explain this differently. It's non-human, but some people say it's from a different dimension. I don't know. They're just our neighbors, and they're house 3. So this chart kind of paints this picture. So he was not acting alone. Other entities were present.